This video is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one tool I've been using for years to build our filmmaking portfolio.
Today I'm going to break down my cinema video rig, but what I really want to do is help you build one yourself because it's super expensive to buy all these parts and you don't need all this stuff. In fact, you don't need any of it really. You can just pick up a camera and shoot if you want. But you know what? Video rigs don't just look cool, they are also very practical. So let's break down the pieces that go into it. A lot of the other stuff that you need. So in my case, I've got XLR built in, for example, and in other cameras, you may need something you can plug the mic into. So that's going to define whether there's an audio piece or not, but in my case, it's all built together. Now you're going to take that camera and you're going to wrap a cage around it. There's universal cages that will fit kind of any camera inside, or there are custom cages. We're going to be looking at a custom cage from Bright Tangerine, but there's a lot of affordable, cheap options out there. I do prefer the custom cages keep the size down. Universal cages are a lot bulkier. And then there's the monitor. Most cameras come with a built-in monitor of some kind. I like to add something bigger and external because sometimes I need to see it from farther away. Sometimes, like right now, I need to see myself while we're shooting. And some external monitors are also recorders that can let you do either RAW or 10-bit or nice upgrades like that. I think it's definitely worth looking at external monitors, so we're going to talk about them here. And now that you have a few things strapped onto your camera, you're going to want to look at external power sources. We're going to talk about V-Lock batteries, which are very universal, and you can kind of plug everything into it using a little plug called DTAP. So those are the basics. Let's go build a rig. All right, this is a fun one for me. Obviously, the first place to start is that this is a C200, which I've talked about a lot. I really have enjoyed using this camera. It's been a dream, especially in terms of an all-in-one package. You don't have to rig it up this much, which is part of the beauty, is you can just run and gun with what you get out of the box. But I gotta be honest, the way that Canon designs the out-of-the-box layout is really ugly. So I had to build it up. I had to make it more of a proper cinema rig to really be happy with it. The thing I hate the most about Canon's setup is the top handle, and also that you can't really add much to it. So the first core of all this, the essential piece, is the left field cage from Bright Tangerine. This cage is available for a whole bunch of different Canons, including the C500 Mark II, the C300 Mark III, the C100. You can kind of get it for anything, and it's very similar. So what you're seeing here applies to the others. Most important to me was a good top handle, because this is how I operate a lot of the time, is kind of that underslung shooting method where I'm holding it from the top, and it's got to be secure and feel like it's not going to break. Before, I was using the small rig top plate and handle, which works fine, but this was a really serious upgrade. As soon as you feel it, you can tell that it is a better build. The metal is nicer. Everything is improved on this. So not only do you have a bunch of attachments on top, you've also got options for rails on the top, rails on the bottom, and a protective cage along the sides, because when you lift it up, if you only have a top plate, all of the weight is going through the plastic of the camera. This way, there are these metal shafts that are actually taking the real weight distribution as you lift the camera up. And Bright Tangerine really had professionals in mind when they designed this. So it has some features that I don't even need personally. For example, you can also get this beautiful, big, long dovetail plate, which would mount to your tripod and kind of live on your tripod. And then you could swap out the base plate. So right now I'm keeping my little Manfrotto plate on the bottom here, but this whole thing can slide right onto this big dovetail. And when you lock it, it's insanely secure. There is no way to accidentally take this off. And it's a two-part release system, so you press once and twice. And it's both easy to unlock, but not too easy, if you know what I mean. Then there's a second security release at the back here. And it's off. Again, I don't really use this because I don't use large enough lenses. This is to balance a kind of a bigger setup than I have here. So I'm just gonna put this off to the side for now and switch back to my usual plate. And this cage is kind of at the mid-range budget level. So if you pick one up, you're not gonna feel the need to upgrade. It's gonna do everything that you need for a long time. If you are more budget constrained, the things to look out for, the most important pieces, I would say, are a very secure top handle, something you feel confident picking up, like the camera's not gonna drop. Like I use my top handle I'd rather have the top handle than the side handle, to be honest. Oh, and let's show that feature real quick. There is a rosette mount on the side, so I can just pull off Canon's, well, if I screw it enough times, I can pull off Canon's handle, mount it back on, and then I've got Canon's controls here. But I could also put a longer handle attached to this if I wanted to. There's lots of options. But it's flexible. It's the Airy standard rosette mount. So I'd also make sure that you have something that has locking pins in it. So this has the 2 extra Airy pins on all of these screw mounts. And that means that nothing is going to come undone as it's moving around, because things want to come undone. They will unscrew themselves any chance they get. So try to have some extra security in there. Also important to me, I'm just going to move this for now, is that I'm able to remove the top handle relatively easily, because when you're tearing it down and putting it away, you want it to be secure. So this is a pretty easy way to start stripping the camera down without completely disassembling it. Like, it only takes 1 second and it's locked again. While I'm playing around with it, let's also talk about arms, because you may need one depending what your accessories are. If you've got a monitor on there, this is the one from Wooden Camera, and I like that it has multiple joints and they're very secure. Once you screw it in place, it's not going anywhere. I also like having multiple joint places, so that if you just loosen one access point, it's harder to necessarily get the monitor in the exact spot that you want, because everything is wobbling around. Having these 2 points means you can lock one in and then adjust the other. But here's a chance to highlight those locking Airy pins. If they weren't there, this wants to loosen itself all day long. So you really need to have some security. Make sure that there are multiple points of contact, because things get loose throughout the day and that stops you from shooting. I've been there. You know that the rig you use doesn't matter compared to the quality of your work, and the best way to show off your work is with today's sponsor, Squarespace. They can help you build a professional home on the internet that shows off your filmmaking in customized, mobile-ready, responsive templates that not only let you build something that looks exactly the way you want, quickly and easily, but also helps you take care of difficult technical things like SEO. I love not worrying about that because Squarespace handles it all for me. And then they manage all the optimization. So if somebody loads your website on a phone or on their computer, it works the way that it should for them, and it always looks great. And you can easily embed your Vimeo or YouTube videos and then add a custom thumbnail that just has your branding on it. So you don't see Vimeo or YouTube or whatever, it just looks like you and your brand. And that's the whole point of a website, is you own this little piece of the internet all to yourself. Because I've said it before, social media does not count as a portfolio because it can disappear at any moment. You don't really control it. So you need to own your own website. To do that, go to squarespace.com, and in just a few minutes, you can have your website up and running, looking just the way you want. When you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Tyler Stallman, and using offer code Tyler Stallman, you're gonna get 10% off your first website or domain. Thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Now, you may or may not need a rail system. The left field cage does offer 15mm rails at the back, which is very helpful for me to mount this battery. Now, I don't know what camera you've got over there. Right now I'm shooting this on the Canon EOS R. If you've got that or an A7S or something like that, you may not need the rails. That's something you can probably skip, because these are really intended for holding either batteries, follow focuses, or matte boxes. And you can probably get away without a lot of those things. So for example, you'll notice I have no matte box on the front of this, which would make the camera look way cooler, but I didn't do it because this camera has internal NDs. I just don't need it. I don't need the extra bulk, but I do often need this extra battery power. So if you're using something like a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, which has kind of bad battery life, you're gonna wanna add a V-mount option like this, and you probably do need rail support. That's I think the first determining thing whether you're gonna need it or not is batteries. That's what brought me into needing this rail system. So let's talk about that. I put my little plate at the back here together myself with scraps I had laying around the studio. This was from a previous counterweight system that I just wasn't using. And then I also had a little V-mount lock just sitting around the studio. So lucky for me, I didn't have to buy them, but there's lots of different ones out there. But you will need something to mount it to if you're going to add a V-mount battery. So the battery running this, and this is a nice thing about it too. See how everything is still powered on even though I've taken it off? It's because I keep extra batteries in here at all times. There's also one inside the C200 so that I can hot swap this. You know, when I recharge one, just stick it back on and it's ready to go. But this is from D&O Lighting. It is a 95 watt-hour battery, which means you can take it on planes. The limit is anything under 100. And I've got 2 of these. They come with a great little charger. I just realized the other day, if I only plug one in, it starts to charge crazy fast. Like it'll recharge them faster than I'm shooting. So I actually don't run out with just the 2 of them, which is amazing. I think 95 watt hours is a great balance for this camera. It can kind of run all day, like I say, on 2 of them will power the full day. If you've got cameras like Reds, they'll chew through it a little bit faster. You might want to start looking at something like a 200 watt hour to really go all day. And the way this is powering it is through DTAP. If you don't know what DTAP is, it is basically a standardized type of cable port. And that's running to both the camera and also to the monitor. So the beauty of this is they are both being powered by the same thing. So when I swap the battery, the whole setup is ready to go. Before I unified my battery system, it meant that I had to keep multiple things charging in different kinds of chargers all day long. It's easy to get messed up. It's very nice to have everything going through one type of power. Then you open yourself up to other things like wireless follow focus that can be powered by this battery, but that's the one thing I'm really missing from this rig. I wish I had one. Just for those times that I'm just operating and I want somebody else to worry about the focus, it would be very helpful, but someday. Also very important is the media that you're recording to, so always make sure you're using a brand you can trust. So I've got a ton of Lexar cards that I've been using for years. This records to 2 SD cards or also a CFast 2.0 card. So this is the new Lexar Professional 512 card, which I'm very happy to have. Having bigger media really helps so you can have those longer run times. This will get about an hour of raw recording on here. And like I say, the most important thing is that you can trust your media because it's the only thing standing between you and having no footage at the end of the day. Also, be sure to check the write speeds match up with the camera that you're using. For example, that set of Lexars is a little bit slow for the EOS R. I have to use faster ones. So just make sure that it is fast enough to keep up with whatever you're recording. And if you happen to be shooting Blackmagic, I love that it can shoot straight to a hard drive. Like it's really messy and ugly in a rig, but it'd be handy if every camera had a USB-C out like that. Great feature. Let's talk about monitors. I do this, I think, a little differently than some people. I keep the original C200 monitor on here, mostly for controls, because I can do touch focus. I have another access to the menu system, and so often somebody might be watching this and I'll have this off to the side, or when I'm recording myself, one can be facing each direction. It's helpful to have two monitors. But that's not the fun one. Let's talk about the good stuff. On top, I've got the small HD Cine 7 Bolt Teradek edition. So this has got the Bolt 500 built in, and it means it can transmit up to 500 meters? It's gotta be feet, right? 500 meters would be too far. I never stretch the distance of this thing because I'm usually doing it either in studio or I've just got a director holding it a few feet away from me. Anyway, having built-in wireless transmission is so helpful, and also a big, bright screen. The Cine 7's been amazing for that. I can see it outdoors perfectly. I've been using other small HDs before this that were darker, like the OLED. I was kind of frustrated by this. Go for a brighter option. Whatever camera you're using, a super bright outdoor monitor that might have worse contrast or even worse color profile. I mean, I just find it so helpful to have the brightness so that you can use it in any shooting environment. That's the priority I think you should focus on. This is the 7-inch monitor. You may not need that size. I feel like it kind of fits this rig. Also, the way that I've mounted it, I have opinions about this. I think some people are doing it wrong. I see people mounting their monitors on arms like this all the time, like off to the side. The problem is that you can't tell what the axis of your camera is when you're holding it. So when I do this right now, see how the small HD is moving at the exact same time? I'll bring this one out, and if I've got it on a slightly off angle, let's say I lock it and it's not totally even, I might try to straighten to the monitor instead of to the camera. So I'm a big fan of mounting this in the exact line of how the camera is facing, so no matter what you do, if it looks crooked on the screen, it is crooked. And the way this is mounted is with a little small HD monitor mount up here that is easy to screw on and off. Oh, and then the other half of this transmits out to a Focus 7 bolt, which receives the signal. I did have an issue when I got them. I gotta let you know, I did have to send them back. Actually, just the Cine 7 had some transmission issues. Small HD was great, they replaced it right away, but I gotta let you know that happened. Also, things to consider, in and outs. This has a pass-through, so I can send SDI, which is the more professional cable system, into this, and then I could send HDMI out, which is very helpful because the C200 can't send them both out at the same time. So take a look at your camera, make sure that you're aware of what your system is. If you need to go through this to a bigger TV monitor or something like that, make sure that it's gonna be able to support whatever your system is. So that's why I have the Cine 7 on the camera, because I can do that pass through, whereas the Focus 7 can't pass the signal through, it only receives it. So it's more of the director's monitor. I can also offer some advice in terms of what not to buy. So I actually did a little thing with Jesse Driftwood the other day where he was asking, what gear do you regret buying the most? And I always have a quick answer for that. It's a Zacuto kit that I bought back in the 5D Mark II days. I bought like a full shoulder rig and I never used it. No, I used it once. I did use it once. That's not to say that a shoulder kit isn't useful. I have used some more recently than that, but with this system, I don't really need it. I never put this on my shoulder because it's just not how I shoot. Maybe you do, but be aware of your shooting style and get the rig that suits what you already do. Don't buy a bunch of stuff hoping maybe you'll start using it. Make sure you actually need it before you buy it. The last few things, in case you're curious here, the lens I've got on here is the Sigma 20mm 1.4, which is awesome. I really love this lens. Actually, I've got all Sigmas on the table right now. This is also the 50, and a lot of the time what lives on here is the 18 to 35. That's what you've probably seen in many of my YouTube videos. Well, thanks for joining me for that, guys. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I love this stuff. Gear is fun. If you want to know more about my favorite gear, go to stallmanpodcast.com or just search for Stallman Podcast in whatever it is you listen to podcasts on. It's my favorite thing to do because I get to talk to other filmmakers and YouTubers and creative professionals on how they do the things that they do. We talk about new cameras and gear and more gear and more gear. It's great. If you watch this far, you'll love it. So yeah, Stallman Podcast, just search for it in YouTube right now. See you over there.